Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Music and Therapy Podcast. I am your host, Keana W. Mitchell. I am a relationship coach who's dedicated to helping you have healthy, happy, and thriving marriages and the relationships that you deserve. In last week's episode, we had such a powerful conversation about emotional intelligence and how it can completely transform the way you show up in your relationship and what you do. We talked about the importance of self-awareness, recognizing your own emotions before they spiral, and how empathy can help you better connect with your partner's feelings, even when things get tense. To find out more about emotional intelligence, be sure to listen to last week's episode of the podcast. And to listen to last week's episode of the podcast, click the link in the show notes so that you can hear the full episode about emotional intelligence. Today, we're continuing that journey by digging into the next layer, recognizing emotional triggers and learning how to respond with compassion, not only to your spouse, but to yourself. So, what are emotional triggers? An emotional trigger is anything, an experience, word, memory, or even a look that sets off a strong emotional reaction. Sometimes it's anger, other times it can be things like withdrawal, shame, or defensiveness. And often these reactions don't have anything to do with what actually is going on in that moment. They're old wounds showing up in new arguments. In a marriage or relationship, this can get complicated because a harmless comment about cleaning the kitchen might set off feelings of being unappreciated. Because when you were younger, your efforts were often dismissed, or if your spouse is quiet after work, you might immediately feel anxious and rejected, simply because silence used to mean something was wrong in past relationships. Recognizing these patterns is huge because when we don't know our triggers, we react. But when we do know them, we can choose how we want to respond. Now, I want to take a second and connect this with what we learned last week about emotional intelligence. So last week we talked about 4 key components, which were self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, and social skills. So let's start with self-awareness. Self-awareness is just knowing what you're feeling and why. And a lot of times we don't know what we're feeling or why. We might think we're angry, but deep down inside we really feel hurt and unappreciated. This is important to be able to know what you're feeling and then why you're feeling this way. Self-regulation is the second one, and this is just managing how you express these feelings or being able to soothe yourself or self-soothe. Empathy is turning into what your spouse might be going through. So this is just thinking about, okay, what are they feeling? What are they going through? How would I feel if I was in that situation? So empathy is pretty much just putting yourself in someone else's shoes, trying to understand where they're coming from or why they may be feeling the way they're feeling. And finally, social skills, which is communicating effectively even during conflicts. This can be difficult to communicate effectively even during conflicts because we do have emotions involved. And so that is why when we talk about emotional intelligence, these 4 things are truly key components that we definitely need to be able to do and practice. So when you recognize that you've been triggered, that's self-awareness. When you choose not to lash out, but instead take a breath or go journal for 10 minutes, that is self-regulation in action. Emotional intelligence gives you the tools to pause, reflect, and respond with grace. So here's the thing. Growth doesn't happen in shame. It happens in compassion. So many of us get frustrated with ourselves when we're triggered. We say things like, why am I still doing this? Or why am I still like this? Or we might say something like, I should be over this by now. But what if you change that inner dialogue? Instead of the judgment, what if you said to yourself, wow, I'm really hurting right now? That moment might hit something deep. It makes sense. I feel this way. If you change your dialogue, That is what we call self compassion. It's not about avoiding accountability, it's about making space for your emotions without beating yourself up. And guess what? When you treat yourself with kindness, you naturally treat your partner with more patience and grace. I know that learning how to recognize emotional triggers is not an easy thing to do. So, here are some exercises that can help you begin to recognize and identify your emotional triggers. The first exercise that I want to talk to you about is called trigger mapping meditation. And so, what trigger mapping meditation is a form of meditation that you can do to help you understand where your triggers lie. So, what you would do in this situation is you would close your eyes, or you can just soften your gaze, and then you would think about a time during the week or in that moment where something unexpectedly made you feel overwhelmed. Maybe it was a conversation with your partner, a text message, or even a moment of silence that felt louder than words. So, in that situation, once you would close your eyes or soften your gaze, and think about that thing that made you feel unexpectedly overwhelmed, you would ask yourself, what happened just before that moment? What thoughts came up? Did that feeling remind me of anything from my past? And you don't need to change anything. You're just simply observing your internal landscape. And you're thinking about this because you're like, it's important to get in contact with yourself, connect with yourself. So by doing this meditation, you're doing several things. You're thinking about what happened in the moment before. You're thinking about what thoughts came up. You're thinking about what that feeling reminded you of and how it may have reminded you of something in your past. And by doing this meditation, you are finding out what could be a possible trigger and why you felt the way you did in that moment. So that's one exercise, and that's called trigger mapping meditation. So this is something you can do to help you figure out what is a trigger for me? Why is that a trigger for me? What makes this a trigger for me? And by doing that, you'll be able to understand what your triggers are. So it'll be easier for you to understand what your triggers are, know why you feel that way, and why you feel triggered. The second exercise that you can do is called a compassionate letter to self. So this is pretty much you would write yourself a letter. And this is a letter not from your critical inner voice, but the part of you that know how to comfort others. Now, I know all of us know how to comfort other people. We are sometimes a lot kinder, more compassionate, more understanding to other people than we are to ourselves. So what I want you to do is think about something you'd say to yourself if you were your best friend. What truth would you speak to yourself if you weren't afraid to? Maybe you write something like, I know you're doing the best you can. I see your effort, and I love you for trying, even when it's hard. You can give yourself affirmation, you can compliment yourself, you can comfort yourself. Just do things that you would do to your best friend. Say things that you would say to your best friend if you had a best friend who was in a certain situation, or if they were feeling triggered or overwhelmed or sad, or if they were ashamed of something that they did. Speak to yourself as if you were speaking to your best friend. Speak to yourself as if you are your best friend. And then this is a way that you can understand what your trigger is and give yourself that space and that compassion to feel your feelings and not be ashamed or embarrassed about your feelings. Exercise number 3 is what I call affirmation grounding practice. And this is just when you take a few grounding breaths. You inhale deeply, you hold, and then you release slowly. Now, as you breathe, you can do this either out loud or in your heart. You can say things like, my emotions are valid. And you say this as you inhale deeply by holding and then releasing slowly. You say, my emotions are valid. I am safe to feel what I feel. I offer myself kindness instead of criticism, because a lot of times we're a lot harder on ourselves. And when we give ourselves positive affirmations and grounding practices, we are anchoring ourselves and navigating challenges in that moment. But we're doing it in a space of love, compassion, and understanding. And we need to give that to ourselves because sometimes we are the last person who get love. We're the last person to get compassion. So it's important to give ourselves the love, compassion, and understanding that we need to have. Another exercise I would highly recommend is pause and play, which is just role reflection. So in this situation or in this exercise, you would imagine a scene. It could be your spouse comes home and heads straight into the bedroom, no hello, no hug, and you feel a pain in your chest. So this is where you will pause and ask yourself, what emotion just rose up? Did you feel dismissed, abandoned, disrespected? Then you would play that scene again in your mind. What would happen if you respond from a place of curiosity instead of fear? So, what if you said something like, hey, you seem quiet, long day? Rather than assuming the worst. That shifts right there where you're feeling. Because sometimes, myself included, we can easily think that another person's feeling is because of something we did or they're mad at us. So we just think the worst. But if we would come with curiosity and role play and first think about, okay, what emotion happened? Why do I feel this way? And pinpoint that emotion, why you feel that way. And then come to your partner or to your spouse from a place of curiosity instead of anger, frustration, disrespect, feeling dismissed. So we kind of change the atmosphere there by changing what we would have done, because remember, we would have been responding out of our reaction instead of responding from a place of curiosity. And so that is another exercise that we can do. Now, I do have some homework for you this week. Each day, I would like for you to jot down a moment where you felt emotionally activated. It could be small. It could be something like you're annoyed when your spouse forgets to text back, or something major like a fight about finances. Note what happens, and you can journal what happens. You can write it down. Write down what happened, what you felt, how you reacted, and then what you wish you did differently. Over time, you're going to start to see patterns, and these patterns are going to be gold because that's where growth lives. That's where growth begins. When you begin to understand and see your patterns, like, oh, I react this way because of this. I say this because of that. I know in my personal life, I have come to realize that there are some things where I may react better than at other times. Like, for example, if I'm tired and someone wants to talk to me, or I want to have a difficult conversation, when I'm tired is not the right time because my actions are just going to be off. Or if I'm feeling disrespected, or if I'm feeling annoyed, these are not good times to have difficult conversations. But if I have slept and I have taken that time to pause and calm myself and self-soothe, then I know that I can have a good conversation. So just knowing yourself, like I really encourage you to get to know yourself like you would a friend. You know how you sit down and you get to know people, you ask people questions about where they're from, their childhood. When we develop friendships, when we first get to know people, we ask questions. And it is a good thing for you to ask yourself the same questions because you will get to know yourself and you'll begin to understand your triggers, who you are, why you react the way you do. When is a good time to talk to you? When is not a good time to talk to you? Just knowing yourself is the best way for you to begin to recognize your triggers, acknowledge your triggers, and then respond with compassion. Now, the song that we're going to listen to today is a song that I wrote called He Cheated on Me. And it's a song about a woman who is trying to deal with emotional triggers from the past of her husband cheating on her. So here is the song, He Cheated on Me. He says my name, and he's always buying me things. It's plain to see that he really loves me. By sending me flowers, inviting a note. The words that he says we are happy, but what people don't even know is that he cheated on me. Nobody knows all of the pain that he caused when he decided to break those simple vows that we made. But he keeps sending me flowers and writing love notes. Right now I don't believe one single word that he said. Looking from the inside out, it seems like we are happy, but what people don't even know is that he cheated on me. This marriage is just a lie. We're keeping up appearances. Things are not what they seem. We really, really, really hurt me. Looking from the inside out, it seems like we are happy, but what people don't even know is that he cheated on me. Looking from the inside out, it seems like we are happy, but what people don't even know is that he cheated on me. So this week I want to challenge you to do two things. Number one, notice your triggers. Keep a little log. What moments upset you more than they should? What were you really feeling beneath the surface? Number two, practice self-compassion. The next time you're hard on yourself, I want you to pause, take a breath, and offer the kindness you would to a dear friend. Because healing doesn't happen overnight, but every time you respond to yourself with love, you make it easier to build the kind of marriage or relationship you truly desire. It's important not just to have a good marriage or relationship with your spouse or partner or significant other, but you also need to have a good relationship with yourself. So keep that in mind as you go through the week. That's all for today's episode of the Music and Therapy Podcast. If you found this helpful, be sure to subscribe and share it with a friend who might need some encouragement too. You've got this. I believe in you, and I can't wait to talk to you again next week. Bye-bye.